We're back, man. Day 29, the Karen Reed trial for her life, man. With so much reasonable doubt in this case, she on trial fighting for her life, and to put someone in jail for the rest of her life. Every witness that the state has brought up, every witness the state has brought up has just been bad for the state. Now, originally, when they charged her, all right, I'm thinking, all right, yeah, maybe, maybe the lady did kill her man. Maybe she had it in reverse and went to punch it forward, and it ends up going backwards, hitting him. She didn't realize it, takes off. I said, all right, there's a possibility right there. I said, or maybe, I said, and another theory that came up was that John knew about the ATF lover guy, knew about him, knew, picked up the vibes at the bar. So on the way there, him and Karen are talking about it, and he said, I'm going to confront him. I want to confront him. And then when Karen got to the house, she said, listen, if that's what kind of time you're on, John, I ain't going in there. Of course, being embarrassed. You know what I mean? She being the one. Hell no, I ain't going in there, man. I just got caught out there talking to another man. I'm not gonna go in there. So John could have went in there, huffy puffy. You know what I mean? Went into that bad environment. The Alberts already didn't like John because of the situation Colin had with him. They had a nickname for him, you know. So there is definitely a lot of reasonable doubt. The whole Jen McCabe house long to, I'm not gonna say the word, on live in the cold, you know. Texting that at 2:30, and I heard the witness's explanation, you know, and the whole thing going up and down the stairs, and the witness says that, what do you say that? Oh no, they were driving up the hill. How many times they drive up and down a hill? And you know, I don't know if that would be similar. Is a car, you're walking, but how about Linetti having that made for TV situation, that Perry Mason situation, when he gets the witness yesterday about the time of the iPhones and the Apple Health application, and he says there's 3 clocks, which is a difference of 3 minutes in all 3 clocks. One's a band clock, the other is like a mono watch. So that right there, and then that same witness, basically saying that at 12:36, I'm going off a lot of this by memory. At 12:36, Karen ends up connecting to John's Wi-Fi. So when they all testified that they're looking at an SUV outside the house, whose SUV was it? Because if Karen Reed was connected to John O'Keefe's Wi-Fi at that 12:30 area, how is she also over at the crib? So they're at sidebar right now. Something else I wanted to bring up, something local that's going on in high school, Cumberland High School, actually, in Rhode Island. Josh Leamer, who is the head football coach over there at Cumberland, I guess there was enough complaints, and it was worth it for the Cumberland High School committee to order an investigation into Josh Leamer. And this investigation has been going on. If you remember, last November 3rd, we talked about the freshman player getting assaulted in the locker room. broken eye socket, had to be taken out by rescue. No adult personnel in the locker room watching over these kids. I'm looking for my notes um about it right now. Well, from what I understand is that the investigator finally finished. Somebody said that this could cost up to $100,000 for the committee to hire this law firm to investigate a high school football coach. Imagine in your community spending $100,000 to investigate anybody in the building, but a coach. You got to be very serious. But this kid being assaulted, and then a week earlier to that, he's in a game. They only put 5, 6 guys, to return a punt. Of course, as a coach, you got to put more than that. So the parents are saying that, little situations like this over and over, that, the kid was basically a target. But the policies that are going on there, the Josh Lima, his responsibilities, the principal's responsibilities, a kid was hospitalized, so we're gonna do a show up on it soon, and we're gonna explore, the incident at Cumberland High School that happened last November. We all know that a student was seriously assaulted, sent to the hospital with serious injuries. Now we're gonna bring you back to this Karen retrial as soon as they finish their sidebar. But I wanted to shed light on this Cumberland High School Josh Lemur investigation. Um, Josh Lemur is the football coach, and also the principal. The way he handled this situation. So we had to examine the decision to uphold the victim's suspension and the appeal process, which I don't understand. If this kid was the victim of an assault, you still suspend the player. And the video that we seen is the same video that the school has, shows the kid doing everything he can to get away from this situation, and the principal, the super, you still uphold the kid's suspension. It wasn't until they appealed it to the school committee, as soon as the school committee seen the video, it was said in executive session, several members got emotional. They got emotional because the video was so damning. This kid got tuned up by a senior player. It was also said there was a lack of adult supervision, which should be a standard policy in these situations, right? When you got these kids, this failure to provide adequate supervision raises concern about the safety and well-being of students. That ain't something I would say. The video evidence, a student at the scene of the incident captured the assault on video, and the footage clearly showed the victim attempting to do everything he could to get out of this situation. I'm glad the father came forward originally with this situation, brought it to the school committee, went for an appeal, because the video serves as undeniable evidence of the unprovoked assault and raises questions about the action taken by this school administration. Now, we're going to have more on this when we come back. We're going to bring you this trial. Oh, I don't even think they got started yet. No, they didn't get started yet, you know, so we'll get back into this while we wait. You know, the kid had he suffered significant injuries. One of the issues that came out of this incident was the lack of adult supervision, which really should be, you know, a standard policy in these situations. The failure to provide this supervision, you know, is definitely big concerns, but the footage shows the victim attempting to avoid conflict, walking away when suddenly he's attacked from behind by a much older and a much larger student. The video serves as undeniable evidence of the unprovoked assault and raises questions about the actions taken by the school. See, one of the most puzzling aspects about this case is the suspension that was imposed to the victim. And I'm glad we got 220 people in the room while we're talking about this, because it's very important to address why the victim was punished with a school suspension, especially considering that the video evidence clearly shows the student's innocence. It shows his attempts to avoid the conflict. And it's essential to try to understand the reasons why the suspension was upheld by the principal. I mean, I don't know about that. I mean, they had their ability to exercise discretion and waive the punishment after reviewing the video, but they did not. They never even thought the parent would take it to the school board. When the kid's being taken away in the rescue, don't you think that Coach Lima or one of these other coaches would have called the parent and let him know, oh, we got a playoff game to get ready for. This is a kid that's injured in a rescue squad right now because you knew what was going on, Josh Lima. You knew what
All
was
right.
going on.
So
The principal, the athletic director, you issued a suspension imposed on the victim.
So moving on.
Why was the victim
to the voir dire
punished
motion
with a
the other
school
day,
suspension?
or voir dire hearing in
Especially
response
considering
to
that
the
this video
Commonwealth's renewed
evidence that
motion for
clearly
reciprocal
shows
discovery
his
and motion
innocence
to exclude defendant's
and
expert,
all
Dr.
attempts
Marie
to avoid
Russell. So the
conflict.
Commonwealth was alleging violations of Rule 14's reciprocal discovery requirement,
So the parents
and the
had to
Commonwealth asked
appeal
for
this,
exclusion of Dr. Russell. I
and it
did
looks like
find
they may
and
be
do
back.
find that there was a violation of the reciprocal discovery obligations of the defendants. I was looking for a remedy. You called it a sanction, Mr. Jackson, but I called it a remedy. And I did tell counsel, as you know, at sidebar a couple of times, at least last week, that I did not want to exclude the testimony if I did not have to. So we had the voir dire, and I'm satisfied that the voir dire provided the Commonwealth the information that the defense should have provided the Commonwealth. So I am going to allow Dr. Russell to testify, but her testimony is very limited, and I think you even sort of acknowledged it the other day, Mr. Jackson. So she'll be allowed only to opine whether or not the marks on John O'Keefe's arm were the result of an animal attack. I find that she is a medical doctor. She's an experienced ER doctor, albeit, several years ago since she's worked in that capacity, but that she does have specialized knowledge in that field that may assist the jury in this regard. But she can't testify as an expert on police activity. There'll be none of that.
And on the back of his head was also scratched. Do you recall
Yes,
that?
I do.
But you did not testify as to how you opined that might have happened.
No.
Would you agree that someone could certainly get scratched on the back of their head if they were, for instance, dragged on the ground?
It's possible.
You described the open wound to the back of his head as a laceration, which is sort of a blunt force injury that's not the result of sharp force trauma. Is that right?
Yes.
And you'd agree that Mr. O'Keefe's head injury came from some sort of blow to the back of the head, whether it be an object or the ground. Is that
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
Objection.
And that injury could be the result of falling backward from a standing position onto concrete.
It's possible.
It could also be the result of being struck with a large object such as a baseball bat or a barbell.
It's possible.
In other words, it was an irregular laceration that resulted from some blunt force trauma.
Correct.
I'd like to sort of circle back to those injuries to Mr. O'Keefe's arm. You testified that there were, again, no fractures, no broken bones, no significant contusions.
Correct.
But you did describe the wounds to Mr. O'Keefe's arm as having discrete linear abrasions, which were caused by some sort of blunt object, correct?
Yes.
What does discrete mean?
It means each one is an individual injury, as opposed to confluent, where it would be all meshed together.
Your Honor, if I could publish what's been previously marked as Exhibit 19.
Okay.
And these are sort of the linear wounds that you're referring to.
Yes.
And you testified that these also sort of appear in clusters or groups. You call them
Yes.
pattern abrasions. Is that right?
Yes, I did.
And you'd agree that, for example, road rash does not result in this type of discrete linear wounds.
It could, but not exactly like this.
Well, typically road rash covers sort of a large area of the skin. It would be a large abrasion. I mean, you've seen numerous cases of road rash in your
Yes.
career. And it doesn't look like that.
Correct.
Blunt force trauma can include injuries from various objects, as you testified, including an animal claw, correct?
Correct.
And you'd agree that these discrete linear abrasions are inconsistent with having been struck by a smooth rear tail light at 24 miles per hour.
Objection.
Can you answer that, doctor?
I can't. By
Okay.
a smooth, no.
All right, next question.
By a smooth rear tail light, you said that is not what you would see at 24 miles per hour, correct?
Objection.
Sustained.
As you testified earlier, you've indicated that based on the facts that were presented to you, you don't know what caused those significant scratches on Mr. O'Keefe's right arm.
I do not.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Sure.
If I could just see what was,
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Lally. Do you recognize that photograph?
I do. It's a photograph of Mr. O'Keefe's right hand.
May I mark that as the next order?
Is there an objection?
may we approach?
Okay.
Document.
Lally approaching. Again, this is Miss Little. You know, the brother of O'Keefe. He's been there every day of this trial. I wonder if they kind of switched it, you know, because I don't see how anyone can believe, unless you got so much hatred for this lady and your mind's made up. You know, sometimes once their mind's made up or they go that far, you know, but they have to be having some doubt, being like, whoa, wait a minute, because there's some things in this trial that you kind of like, whoa, wait a minute here. Like, what the dude say, Woody, in the other trial? I was watching the YSL trial, which is a crazy, crazy trial, but he said, I know I didn't finish school, but I am speaking proper English. You know, so like, so I'm just wondering how the families are feeling now. Are they, and they switching sides, the red soul cups, the open brown bags, stuff they were doing, what is the defense gonna put on as far as when their case comes forward? Are they gonna find DNA in that house that the Alberts were living in? Because something tells me that they had access to that house. And we'll see. And is Karen Reed going to testify? She said that she would like to, but she has to follow the advice of her attorneys, and she's facing life. She's facing life.
You
It's
are
a long
unmuted.
time. It's forever. It's crazy with the Soul Cubs and all the evidence collection and Proctor. It's crazy that, the police departments and the AG's office, they don't really think anything was a big problem here. Nothing was destroyed, right? Didn't any fate? Yeah, I think this whole case was screwed up.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Your Honor.
I'm saying, oh no, there's definitely,
Permission to
that
publish?
they definitely have enough
Well,
to
we need to
convict her. I'm
mark it
like,
first.
where?
So we'll mark it for identification, and then when
Okay, let's
it's
listen.
appropriate, it will be
Just a little.
transferred to being an exhibit.
Thank you.
But yes, you can publish. Is it all set to be published appropriately?
Yes, Your Honor.
The triple N for identification. Okay.
Dr. Scordivello, you indicated on direct examination that at least that one of the bruises from Mr. O'Keefe's right hand could potentially be attributed to an attempt to get IV fluid into the hand. Is that correct?
Correct.
During the course of your conducting your autopsy, you reviewed records from the Canton Fire Department and EMS, as well as Good Samaritan Hospital. Is that correct?
I did.
And do you recall reviewing records indicating that the IV fluids in this particular case were administered through the tibia and then later through a catheter at the hospital?
Yes, they were administered through intraosseous lines in both legs, shins, and at the hospital, they were administered through a femoral central line. Yes.
And you'd agree that bruising to the backs of hands is also consistent with defensive wounds.
Yes, that's correct.
And there are actually 4 separate distinct bruises outside of the one that you discussed earlier on Mr. O'Keefe's right hand, correct?
Yes, I would say 3, but I can see how you would say 4. 1, 2, 3. That might be 1 together. But yes, I can see how you would say 4.
And you testified yesterday that there was also an injury to Mr. O'Keefe's left hand.
There was a vague contusion on his left hand, correct?
You were asked by Mr. Lowry.
Can we take this down now, Ms. Little?
Yes, Your Honor. You testified on direct examination that you didn't see any sort of obvious signs of the fight because Mr. O'Keefe's fingernails were intact and you didn't observe any fractures on his hands. Is that right?
Correct.
But broken fingernails and fractured hands aren't the only observable signs of a fight. Isn't that correct?
That's correct.
In fact, you noted a laceration over his eye.
Yes.
You noticed multiple lacerations on his nose.
abrasions on his nose, yes, Yes.
Multiple abrasions on his nose.
correct.
You notice a laceration to his tongue.
Yes,
You noted the contusions on the back of his right hand,
correct,
the injury, the contusion to his left hand as well.
correct.
And as you just testified, bruising on the back of hands may be consistent with defensive wounds.
It could be.
So in fact, if you have a body that presents with a laceration to one of the brows, a laceration or abrasions to the nose, an egg over an eye, contusions and abrasions on the hands, and a laceration to the tongue, these injuries are consistent with a physical altercation, correct?
Objection.
Sustained.
Are those injuries consistent with a physical altercation?
Objection.
Sustained.
Your Honor, may we approach?
Sure.
You are unmuted.
Shifting gears for a second, you indicated on direct examination that you reviewed some photographs from law enforcement that showed no footprints in the snow. Do you recall that testimony?
I do.
Were those provided to you by Trooper Proctor?
Yes.
Do you have those photographs with you?
No, I don't.
Do you recall what was depicted in those photographs?
Yes. If I remember correctly, it was the area of the fire hydrant and the area where Mr. O'Keefe's body was discovered. It's the front of the house, the area of the fire hydrant, and I believe the flagpole.
Thank you. You testified that Mr. O'Keefe had multiple fractures to his skull, but that they seemed to be originating from a single point of impact on the back of his head. Is that correct?
It appeared so, yes.
Are you reasonably certain that all of his injuries were the result of a single impact to the back of the head?
It could be a single impact.
But it also could be multiple impacts, correct?
It could be, yes.
Because as you just testified, Mr. O'Keefe suffered multiple injuries to the front of his face as well.
Correct.
In other words, he could have suffered a trauma to the face and then fallen and sustained the injury to the back of the head, correct?
That is possible, yes.
And you testified before the state grand jury that the areas of bruising to the brain were likely due to a fall. Is that correct?
Yes.
In your expert medical opinion, is it possible for someone to get punched in the face hard enough to lose consciousness and fall backward?
Objection.
I'll allow it.
It's possible.
If I can have one.
Sure.
May I see the exhibits that were just marked, Your Honor? Your Honor, if I could have permission to publish what's been previously admitted as Exhibit 19.
Yes.
Dr. Squirtyville, it's kind of hard to see in this picture, but there's some redness that you observe on the body by the ribs that we observed in some of the other photographs that were presented by Mr. Lally.
We have just a moment, Your Honor.
Yes.
Your Honor.
Yes.
I'd like to show you what's been previously marked as People's Exhibit 648. Ms. Gilman, would it be, Mr. Bates, could you take that down?
Yeah.
Ms. Gilman, would it be possible to display Exhibit 648? 648. May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
2853. Thank you. Dr. Squirtyville, you were shown this photograph by Mr. Lally on direct examination.
Yes,
Do you see the redness sort of next to his rib cage on the bottom? Correct.
yes.
What is that?
That is livor,
Lividity?
lividity. Yes.
Can you describe for the jury what lividity is?
Yes, lividity is the pooling of blood to the dependent areas of the body after someone is deceased.
So even though it sort of appears to look like a bruise, that's lividity, correct?
That is lividity. Yes, it goes all the way down.
And it's not the result of an injury.
No.
Thank you. No further questions.
Okay, the lights, please. Thank you. Mr. Lally?
Yes, Your Honor. Dr. Squirtyville, you did observe a minor abrasion to Mr. O'Keefe's right knee, is that correct?
Correct.
And what part of the knee was that on, if you recall?
It was on the side, on the lateral side of his right knee.
And by lateral, sort of the side that faces away from the body, is that correct?
Correct.
We're asked whether or not the small injuries on Mr. O'Keefe's face could possibly be from a punch, is that correct?
Correct.
We said that's one of the possibilities, is that correct?
Yes.
What are some of the other possibilities?
Could be impact during a fall. It could be coming in contact with any blunt object in the snow.
Would glass be a possibility as far as a blunt object?
It could be under certain circumstances.
Piece of plastic under certain circumstances as far as a blunt object, would that be also a possibility?
Correct. Yes.
Now, as far as the abrasion near the laceration on the back of Mr. O'Keefe's head, you were asked some questions about whether or not that could be from drag, correct?
Correct.
Now, as far as injuries or abrasions concerning dragging, would it be typical to see just one isolated abrasion in the area of a laceration?
Not typical, but possible.
Could that also be a result of the blunt impacts or, as one of the possibilities you testified before, from hitting the ground?
Yes.
Now, you were asked about hitting the ground and specifically hitting concrete. Would that impact injuries to the back of Mr. O'Keefe's head also be consistent with striking his head on frozen ground?
I'm sorry.
No, I'll allow it.
Can you repeat the question?
You were asked a question on cross-examination about the laceration and abrasion to the back of Mr. O'Keefe's head being consistent with striking his head on concrete, correct?
Yes,
Would that also be consistent with striking his head on frozen ground?
could be, yes.
You were asked about certain wounds as being a possibility of defensive wounds. What are some of the other types of defensive wounds that you would expect to see that you did not see in this case?
I would expect to see, or I have seen, multiple bruising to the, again, posterior aspects of the forearms. I have seen cuts, lacerations, depending on how a person might be defending themselves, the position of their arms.
And would that also includes breaks in the fingernails and fractures to the hands?
Objection.
Watch the form, Mr. Lally, sustain.
What, if anything else, would that include?
It might include bruising to the knuckles. It might include broken fingers.
Now, with reference to the injuries that you were asked about with respect to Mr. O'Keefe's right hand, would those also be consistent with impact from a blunt object as well?
They are blunt impact injuries, yes.
Now, again, if I could, just with reference to, you were asked about different possibilities with the skull fractures and bleeding in the brain. What is your opinion as to sort of how that was caused and sort of, if you could again just go through your opinion as to the head injuries, the skull fracture, and the bleeding?
Objection.
Ask it again, Mr. Lally, in a different way.
You were asked about some possibilities. What is your opinion as to how those injuries were sustained or manifested in this room?
I don't know how they came to be. I described them and I stated previously that they are consistent with a fall to the back of the head.
And so I'm sorry, Doctor. My question is more geared towards as far as the single impact to the back of the skull and then sort of radiating fractures in the skull. If you could explain that in reference to the subdural hemorrhage, subarachnoid hemorrhage, and the ecchymoses that you observed.
Again, a single impact with a fall could cause all the injuries that were seen in the brain and the skull.
Thank you. I'm not.
No further questions.
All right, doctor, you are all set. Thank you very much. All right, Mr. Lally.
Thank you, Your Honor. Commonwealth rests.
All right.
Your Honor, the defense would move the court for,
So I'm going to stop you right there. A short recess.
if the court needs one.
I don't need one, but I will see you at sidebar.
Hey there, Karen Reed, Trial Watchers. This is another law and crime legal alert. Have you experienced severe gastroparesis or other side effects after taking Ozempic or another GLP-1 weight loss medication? The Ozempic lawsuits allege that the drug can lead to severe intestinal blockage and persistent vomiting, and that manufacturers allegedly failed to provide adequate warnings about these risks. Well, True Law, one of our legal sponsors, is helping those injured file a claim through an experienced attorney who helps ensure your claim is thoroughly presented. Just visit www.glp1case.com/LC Live to answer less than 10 questions and check your eligibility to file a claim.
seated, court is in session.
Here they are. They're returning from their
You are
break.
All right, so Mr. Jackson,
God, you
yesterday you
stuck
told me
around.
you'd
My
like
mic
10 minutes for
wasn't
your
working.
argument.
It was
I'll
like
hear
it
you
was
now.
chaotic, man.
Thank you, Your
But
Honor.
Jackson, man, he
Your Honor,
puts
I'll
on
be
a hell of a
brief.
show on his
The court must
cross-examination.
consider, after viewing the evidence in light most favorable to the Commonwealth, whether a rational jury could find the elements of the charges beyond a reasonable doubt. And here, the case that the Commonwealth has submitted to the jury after resting is insufficient to meet such a finding. There's no question but that with this particular prosecution in this particular case, no reasonable or rational jury could come to a unanimous verdict in favor of the Commonwealth. I want to, if I can, focus my argument on count 1, 2, and 3 and a specific element of each count.
Okay.
In each one of those counts, there must be evidence that the vehicle killed John O'Keefe. There has been no competent evidence presented in the Commonwealth's case that Karen Reed's vehicle actually struck John O'Keefe. There's been conjecture, there's been speculation, but no actual competent evidence. The Commonwealth's entire case relies on a theory built on the shoulders of a trooper named Joe Paul, who testified a couple of days ago. And his theory, according to the Commonwealth, is that John O'Keefe's arm was struck, he was spun around in sort of a pirouette, he was projected 30 feet to the left, hit his head on a curb or the road in the intervening time before coming to a final rest spot about 30 feet away. Everything in the Commonwealth's case, everything relies on that theory of damage to the taillight at the scene. If a rational jury could not unanimously determine that Trooper Joe Paul's theory is true beyond a reasonable doubt, then we believe the motion has to be granted. There is no competent medical evidence to support that theory. There's no competent physical evidence that the taillight could break and shatter in the way that they've suggested, and that the arm would not have any breaks or shatters or any damage, any additional damage. There's no evidence how getting hit in the arm could actually launch a body 30 feet, as per the Commonwealth's theory. And there's no evidence how a body hit by a 7,000-pound SUV could sustain no injuries from the neck down, which we just heard this morning. The evidence before the court, the only evidence that is before the court, is that the Commonwealth's own medical examiner does not believe this is a homicide. And she went on this morning to say that in her expert opinion, the injuries are not classic pedestrian injuries. And they are, every single one of them, consistent with a physical altercation. Calling a witness to simply espouse an opinion like Trooper Paul did that belies science, common sense, or even logic, that's not enough to get the case to the jury. The light most favorable to the Commonwealth does not mean that the court must believe the Commonwealth's witnesses. What it means is that if there is a rational controversy in the evidence, the court must accept that evidence that favors the Commonwealth. But here, there is no rational controversy. As put or expressed in Commonwealth versus McCormick, it's a 2023 case found at 491 Mass 848, pinpoint site 860, quote, where the Commonwealth's evidence is entirely circumstantial, it cannot meet its burden if the evidence equally supports inconsistent propositions, as resolution of such a case necessarily requires conjecture or surmise. In our view, there is no question that there's no rational controversy related to the Commonwealth's theory. Trooper Paul's theory is by definition not rational. It's not reasonable. And it's basically based entirely on conjecture. And that's why, in our view, the court is required to find Ms. Reed not guilty of counts 1, 2, and 3. It's because each of the counts, as I said at the beginning, necessarily include an element that John O'Keefe was struck by Karen Reed's vehicle. Thus, if a rational jury cannot reasonably believe Trooper Paul's theory, it's the only evidence presented by the Commonwealth describing how Mr. O'Keefe possibly could have been struck, then Ms. Reed is entitled to an acquittal. Nothing else matters. Nothing else in the court's evaluation, nothing else in the jury's evaluation, nothing. Everything turns on whether or not the car hit John O'Keefe. And the Commonwealth's only theory of how that happened is from Trooper Paul's description. If the court were to deny this motion, then by doing so tacitly, the court is expressly endorsing Trooper Paul's theory of how John O'Keefe was struck, and we don't believe that that's rational. We don't believe that any rational jury would ever unanimously agree with Trooper Paul, and thus we ask the court to find Ms. Reed not guilty at this time.
Okay.
I'll submit.
I totally agree, man. I don't see how any
Your Honor, if I may just, we have,
reasonable jury can find
act on
Karen Reed
that are,
guilty of any of them charges.
and
So if they lump the DUI charge in with it, like, now let's see what,
All right, I will hear you, Mr. Lally.
Yes, Your Honor. Surprisingly, I would disagree with counsel's
So let's leave the comments out.
Your Honor, as far as the comments, all I was going to say is that I would submit to the court that,
Is this surprisingly that I took issue?
and my apologies for that. What I would submit to the court, Your Honor, is that this case does not rest and fall with the testimony of Paul. Paul's testimony, while important when taken in conjunction with the remainder of all of the other witnesses and all of the other testimony that the court has heard, I don't want to minimize it, but at the same time, that is not the only evidence that the vehicle struck Mr. O'Keefe or interacted with Mr. O'Keefe. So what the court has, as far as the physical evidence, next to Mr. O'Keefe's body, one sneaker in the location of the curb, the glass, the drinking glass that Mr. O'Keefe is seen walking out of the Waterfall Bar at approximately 12:11 a.m. with, that is in the vicinity, the direct vicinity where the Canton police officers actually recover it early in the morning of January 29th. You have the microscopic pieces of the defendant's taillight, which was testified by Ms. Hanley to be consistent with pieces of the taillight from the defendant's vehicle that are within or embedded within Mr. O'Keefe's clothing. You have the remainder of the pieces of taillight, and this part is important in relation to Paul's testimony as far as the linear momentum, and it's all in the same sort of direction and path of all of the roadway evidence that he observed that's discovered in and around the area where Mr. O'Keefe's body was. The testimony from Ms. Valier, with reference to all of those taillight pieces and how they were able to reconstruct from the pieces that were found on the ground and then put back together, matching with that, but the taillight housing from the defendant's vehicle. The taillight housing from the defendant's vehicle, which has the victim's, Mr. O'Keefe's DNA contained on it, as well as the mitochondrial DNA testing of the hair that was on the rear right quarter panel of the defendant's vehicle, which also was matched or consistent with that of Mr. O'Keefe, his mitochondrial DNA, as well as the court heard from Ms. Chart from Voting Technology. You have the plethora of testimony from the various civilian witnesses from that particular night. You have the evidence of motive from the text communications, as well as the testimony of the children in this case, as to the state of their relationship from the defendant's own mouth in those text communications and in those voicemails as to the state of their relationship. You have the testimony in regard to Mr. O'Keefe and his recounting of the state of their relationship and his numerous attempts to break it off with Ms. Reed prior to that day. There are arguments that continue throughout the afternoon of the 28th and seemingly into the 29th. You have the defendant's own statements that I hit him, that come from multiple sources, including firefighter Nuttall, firefighter Famati, firefighter McLaughlin, and Ms. McCabe. You have her statements to the paramedics in the back of the ambulance that the last time that she saw Mr. O'Keefe, they had gotten into an argument. You have the testimony in regard to Ms. Roberts and Ms. McCabe as far as the altercation or the verbal argument stemming from Ms. McCabe's reference of Bella's mother being a landmark, being someone that Mr. O'Keefe used to date just prior to that argument occurring in front of the house at 34 Fairview Road. With each and every piece of evidence that was presented throughout the course of the Commonwealth's case, including the forensic evidence, including especially one thing I would stress for the court is taking not only Trooper Paul's testimony, but Trooper Paul's testimony in juxtaposition to Trooper Dorino's testimony as far as the vehicle or the native GPS locations of Mr. O'Keefe's phone in reference to the timing and in particular the information or data from the Toyota text stream. Trooper Garino's GPS native location of Mr. O'Keefe's phone has that reversal, same reversal, the same 3-point turn that Trooper Paul testified about, which testing videos that Trooper Paul conducted with the defendant's vehicle so the court can see exactly what that vehicle looks like at approximately 25 miles per hour in reverse in a straight line. And what I would submit, Your Honor, is that there's more than sufficient evidence from a medical perspective, from a forensic perspective, from a civilian witness perspective, and from the investigation of this case as to all 3 indictments that the Commonwealth has met its burden, particularly under the standard before the court at this time. And for those reasons, I would request that the defendant's motion be denied.
Okay. All right. In the light most favorable to the Commonwealth under the prevailing Lattimore standard here in Massachusetts, I am satisfied the Commonwealth has met its burden. The defendant's motion is denied. So, Mr. Yannetti, are you calling your first witness?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, so let's bring the jurors in, please.
Okay, now the defense starts its case. You know, now Lally had his turn. Now it's time for Team Jackson, Yannetti, and Little to bring their witnesses and close the door on this entire case. Welcome to the 300 people in the building tuning in to watch Karen read and the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, everything the state has put on, every witness. Am I being biased here? Like, has it been laughable or plausible? Or do you say, huh? Even people that are not familiar with the law 100% said, what? And the objections, all these objections, is there a rule in Massachusetts that you don't have to state the grounds of your objections? So we're waiting for the defense to call its first witness.
Court, all rise for the jury.
All right, here we are, halftime, 1st and 10. Defense cut the ball. I mean, I'm so curious what goes on in the brothers, like, you know, what he's talking about. Is he just so convinced that it's Karen, or was he able to say, wait a minute, 'cause there's a lot of things in this case that make you say, whoa, that's not right.
Please be seated.
How fast they, like, it seems like they knew what they wanted to do,
All right,
and now
so
they're
jurors, if you
making
remember
the
in my
evidence fit
preliminary
the crime.
instructions to you a long time ago now, I stressed to you that the burden of proof rests with the Commonwealth. The defendant has no burden of proof whatsoever, doesn't ever have to testify or present any evidence. So the Commonwealth has completed its case, the Commonwealth has rested, and I want you to keep in mind that the defendant has no burden of proof. Ms. Kennedy, do you have a witness for us?
Thank you very much, Your Honor. The defense calls Brian Laughlin.
Okay.
He is. Why don't you step forward? Stand and face the front.
Do solemnly swear the evidence you give the court and jury in the case now and hearing should be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help me God.
I do. Great. May I proceed, Your Honor?
Yes.
Good morning, sir. In a good loud voice, would you state your name and spell your last name?
Sure, it's Brian Loughran. It's Loughrin.
And where are you from,
Mr.
sir?
Lockren, I'm going to ask you to keep your voice up as loud as you can, sir.
Sorry.
That's
You're
okay.
gonna
Maybe
shut
put
that
your,
AC
mouth
off.
as close to the mic as
Better
you can.
keep that voice
But
up
where did you
there.
grow up, sir?
Canton, Mass.
Is that where you live?
Yes.
How long have you lived there?
Both 35, 36 years.
And did you go to Canton Public Schools?
Yes.
Now, in the course of living in Canton, were you familiar with the Albert family?
Yes.
Which members of the Albert family were you familiar with?
All of them.
And when you say all of them, can you name the ones that you were familiar with?
I was familiar with Brian,
Brian Albert?
Chris Albert, Brendan Albert, Kevin Albert, and I believe Kathy Albert's the sister, but I'm not 100% sure on her first name.
Okay, and those are the siblings that you had contact with and were familiar with?
Yes.
Did you know some better than others?
Yes.
Whom did you know the best?
Chris Albert.
What is the age difference between you and Chris Albert?
I believe we're the same age.
Did you graduate high school with him?
He went to a different high school, but yes,
Graduated at the same time?
correct.
And with regard to your familiarity with Chris Albert, can you explain to the jury how you became familiar with him and what your relationship with him has been?
I went to school with him, elementary school. We went to middle school. Then he transferred to a Catholic school. Then later in years, I began to work for Chris for D&E Pizza, delivering pizzas.
Okay. And approximately what ages were you when you were delivering pizzas for D&E Pizza and Chris Albert?
I was 25, 26 years old.
And how many years did you deliver pizzas for him?
Up until I got married, 35.
So several years.
8 years.
8 years, okay. And with regard to your interactions or knowledge of Kevin Albert, can you describe that?
Kevin Albert would be through D&E Pizza if he came in. Through the police department, would see him on details.
All right. And were you friendly with him?
Yes.
With regard to Brian Albert, could you describe your interactions or your relationship with him?
Again, through D&E Pizzas, delivering pizzas to his house. Cordial, polite, would say hello.
All right. So you're friendly with the Albert family?
Correct.
Now, back in January of 2022, where were you working?
I was working for the town of Canton.
In what department?
I was working in the sewer department.
Is that also called the water department?
Yes, water and sewer are combined.
And under what heading is that? The
The
water.
DPW.
It's under the DPW, the Department of Public Works.
Correct.
Now, back in January of 2022, were you one of the regular snow plowers for the town of Canton?
Yes.
And directing your attention to January 28th of 2022, do you remember that day?
Yes.
What do you remember about that day, the 28th?
It was a potential blizzard. We had been given a start time.
All right. And when you say you had been given a start time, what does that mean?
It means that we're expected to be in our trucks at a certain time on our route.
Okay. And who gives those instructions back in January of 2022?
The supervisor for Canton DPW,
And who was that at the time?
William Walsh.
Also known as Billy Walsh?
Yes.
Now, when were you called in to do plowing
that evening or early morning?
We were told to be in by 2:30
And is that 2:30 a.m. or p.m.?
a.m.
Would that now be on January 29th?
Correct.
What time did you arrive at the DPW that early morning?
About 2:15.
When you got there, what did you need to do in order to go out plowing?
I needed to get into my truck and get that prepared to go out.
All right, and your truck, is there one that's specifically assigned to you when you plow?
Yes.
And does that truck have any particular nickname?
Yes, it's called the Franken truck.
And why is it called the Franken truck?
It is a truck that has a lot of different parts than what it's required. It's not parts that were made for that specific truck.
An older one?
Yes, it was a truck that was very uncomfortable at the beginning to use, so they try to make it as comfortable as possible.
All right. And that particular truck, is it used for anything else other than snow plowing?
Yes, it's used for everyday use.
Okay. Now, so you get to the DPW at 2:15, you say that you get your truck ready. What does that entail to get your truck ready, and how long does it take?
It takes about 5 minutes. We just basically you need to make sure that it's got enough gas in it, so we're not going to the route and running out of diesel fuel, which is not good. It's just basically going over the truck, making sure you have everything you need for that night.
And do you plow alone or with someone?
By myself.
Now, with regard to the visibility in your snowplow Franken truck, can you describe that for the jury, what you can see, what you can't see?
So the Franken truck has an air ride suspensions, an air ride seat. So the seat is raised so I can see over the hood.
Okay.
And I can see about 5 feet on either side of the passenger side, driver's side.
And when you say 5 feet, are you talking straight out from the
windshield straight out?
All right. And what, if any, lighting do you have on Franken truck?
We have marking lights. We have 2 plow lights that are situated at the corners of the trucks, and it's up high. It illuminates very well. It's very well seen.
Okay. And with the extra set of lighting that you just described, how far can you see off to the sides, in front of you, and directly in front of you?
Probably 5 feet on the sides.
Well, you already testified to that, 5 feet straight out.
Yeah.
But what about the sides going forward?
It's hard to decide to put into words, but I can see a real long distance. That visibility is fine. It is extremely. If you gave me probably 5, 10 feet, 15 feet out, maybe even further.
Okay. And with regard to the lighting, how much light does that give off?
Enormous amounts. It's almost driving with the spotlight.
And with regard to the air ride seats, what action did you take with those that particular night?
I raised it so that the bottom of my knees would hit the steering wheel.
And what, if any, obstructions, I should say, were in front of you that would prevent you from seeing what's in front of you or to the side?
Nothing.
All right. Now, do you have a specific route assigned to you?
Yes, I do.
Could you describe that route? And by the way, that specific route, was that the one that you were assigned on January 29th?
Correct.
Could you describe that for the jury?
Yes, it's a route that consists of Cedar Crest from Kings Road to Chapman Street and everything into. There are a lot of streets I could name if you would like, but Fairview is one, Spring Lane is one, Cedar Crest, Kings Road. Those are pretty important roads that I would consider major roads on my route.
All right. Now, that particular night, if you got there at 2:15, what time do you think you were on the road in Franken truck?
I was on Cedar Crest about 2:30, 2:35.
Now, with regard to Cedar Crest, I would like to show you a map if I can. May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
I've handed you a document. If you could just review that to yourself and then look up at me when you're done. Do you recognize what's depicted on that?
Yes,
What is it?
it is my plow route and consisting of streets that I plow.
All right, and to be fair, that's a portion of your plow route, right?
Correct.
There are other areas of the city that you plow?
This actually depicts my actual physical route.
Oh, okay, great. And that's a fair and accurate representation of the streets as they existed back in January of 2022?
Yes.
I would offer that, Your Honor.
Any objection, Mr. Lally?
No, Your Honor.
Okay.
Thank you. And could I have permission to publish before the hearing?
Sure.
She was like, "You want to object,
Now,
Mr. Lally?"
you just
Like
testified
basically
when you
telling
got
him
to
object.
the-
He was like, "No, Your
You said
Honor."
2:30 to 2:35 or so?
Correct.
I've never
All right,
seen
as we
anything
look
like it.
at
You want
this
to
exhibit
object,
on the
Mr. Lally?
screens, are you going from right to left or left to right on Cedar Crest when you first approach Fairview?
Yeah, everyone can just
Right to left.
Okay, so you're going sort of from the
subscribe or
upper
follow the
right-hand
page.
corner of the
Check out our
diagram
Facebook page.
down Cedar Crest toward Fairview. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Can you take the laser pointer and just confirm that route for the jury? That's, okay. You see that's Fairview Road? Are you able to read that right?
I'm not, to be honest with you. I'm sorry.
Do you still have that map in front of you?
Maybe that'll help you, Mr. Lally.
And actually, can I orient it so it's oriented just like that for him? Okay, that's how it's up on the screen.
Okay.
And by the way, I should have asked this, but is it in terms of is it, you can't read the writing or you can't really see the outline of the streets?
Both.
Okay. Well, that's not going to help much. Okay, if we can have the lights back on. With the court's permission, can I leave that up on the screen while I ask a few more questions?
Sure, except you said you can't see it.
Right, no, I know, but the jury can, so I think it would be helpful for them. All right, so you're coming down Cedar Crest, and would Fairview be on your left or your right when you first approach it?
When I first approach, it's on my left.
All right, now, do you take that left at that time?
No, I do not.
Why not?
At the time, I'm pushing snow and we don't want to block any part of the road with snow, and taking a left would have left a row of snow. So I proceed to the end of Cedar Crest, do a cul-de-sac, and then head back up Cedar Crest.
All right, so there's a cul-de-sac at the end of Cedar Crest.
Correct.
Dead end.
Yes.
And you plow that?
Yes.
All right, so then when you come back up, is Fairview on your right or your left?
It is on my right.
What do you do?
I take that right and continue to plow.
Now, are you familiar with the Albert residence on Fairview Road?
Right.
Yes.
Right.
How did you become familiar with that?
Growing up in Canton, I knew where they lived.
Can I have exhibit 66 displayed with the court's permission?
Yes.
Every small town has one of them families, you know? It just goes their way.
From where you're seated now, Mr. Walker, are you able to see what's on the screen?
Yes.
And do you recognize that?
Yes.
What do you recognize that to be?
That is the Albert house, Brian Albert's.
And when you were passing the Albert home on Fairview, the very first time you passed it, would it have been on your right or your left?
It would have been on my right.
What section of the road were you plowing at that point?
The middle of the road.
Why is that?
I start in the middle and I angle right with the plow.
Now, I want to direct your attention to when you were, your truck was essentially perpendicular to the driveway. You see the driveway in Exhibit 66?
Yes, I do.
When you were perpendicular to the driveway, where were your headlights pointed?
In front of me, in front of the truck,
I'm sorry?
in front of the truck.
And what were you able to see of the front lawn of the Albert residence that very first time you passed?
I was able to see the entire front lawn.
Oh,
And about what time was it that you first passed 34 Fairview Road?
About 2:45.
Now, as you continued along past the driveway, did you continue to have all of those headlights on in front of you?
Yes.
And as you continued along, what were you able to see of that front lawn? How much of it?
A very large portion, almost to the front steps.
And now, when you're plowing, where is your attention focused, sir?
My attention's focused in front of me and then to the sides.
Why would your attention be focused to the sides?
I am trying to be aware of any side traffic, any pedestrians, and God forbid, any animals.
And when you were passing the Albert residence, as you pass every home, what attention do you pay to the sides of the road and the lawns that are adjacent to the road?
I'm, again, making sure that there are no animals, no pedestrians, and making sure no one's coming out of their driveways, not expecting to see me.
And with regard to Exhibit 66, do you see the flagpole there?
Yes,
Is that something you had seen previously?
yes.
And when you made that first pass by that residence at 2:45 in the morning, sir, with your headlights on, what, if anything, did you see on the front lawn in the area of the flagpole?
I saw nothing.
If there had been a 6'2", 200-pound man lying in the snow there, would you have seen it?
Objection.
Sustained.
Okay. Now, once you pass the residence, where do you go?
I go to the end of Fairview.
And what street does that intersect with?
That intersects with Chapman Street.
We have the previous exhibit, put back up with the court's permission.
Sure.
Okay. Do you still have the exhibit oriented the same way, sir?
Yes, I do.
Where's Chapman Street on the exhibit? Down the bottom, the top, or which side?
Down the bottom.
Okay. And when you come to the end of Fairview with Cedar Crest in your rear now, right?
Correct.
Do you take a left or a right on Chapman?
I take a left
All right.
onto
And
Chapman.
once you take that left, what do you do?
I back up and then take a left to go back down Fairview.
Okay. So you're essentially doing almost a 3-point turn in the road?
Correct.
All right. So now, do you go back down Fairview at that time?
Yes, I do.
And how far do you go down Fairview?
To the end, to Cedar Crest.
Now, at this point in time, you would also pass the Albert residence, correct?
Correct.
Would it be on your right or your left?
On my left.
Were you looking to the right and the left as you were coming down?
Yes.
How much light did your headlights illuminate of the Albert's front lawn as you were coming down from Chapman Street?
Coming down Chapman, just about the entire front lawn.
And again, with regard to that area around the flagpole, did you see anything on the lawn?
Nothing.
See a body?
No.
All right. Now, after you've done these two passes, sir, where do you go?
I then take a right on the Cedar Crest. I proceed up Spring Lane, come down Spring Lane, and then do the remaining of my route.
How long did it take you before you wound up back at Cedar Crest and Fairview?
About 45 minutes.
So I think you had previously testified you made the first pass around 2:45.
Correct.
So would that put us at about 3:30 when you're about to make the second pass?
Objection.
Sustained, ask it Tiffany.
Sure, I'm sorry. What time was it, to your best estimate, in terms of when you would have approached Fairview and Cedar Crest again?
3:15 to 3:30.
All right. Now, when you approach that intersection, again, are you approaching it such that Fairview would be on your left or your right this time?
On my left.
Same as last time.
Correct.
What do you do when you approach Cedar Crest? I'm sorry, when you approach Fairview and it's on your left?
At that point, I have an option. I can go to the end of Cedar Crest, or I can turn around at a street, depending on how much snow I have on Fairview.
And with regard to the decision you made regarding that choice, what decision did you make on January 29th at 3?
Went all the way to the end.
Went all the way to the end of Cedar Crest?
Correct.
Same thing you did the first time?
Correct.
And then you come back up?
Correct.
Is Fairview on your right or your left at that time?
It would be on my right.
And did you take that right?
Yes, I did.
What, if anything, unusual did you see at that point?
At that point, I saw a Ford Edge on the side of the road
Where was it parked on the side of the road?
in front of the Albert's house,
Where in front of the Albert's house?
by the flagpole.
And why was that unusual?
The Alberts never had cars that were parked out front, and it just stuck out as weird.
Now, what were the snow conditions like at that point? This is now, I think you said about 3:15 to 3:30.
It's starting to accumulate a lot quicker than what it was previous.
And what policies does the DPW have regarding cars parked in the street during a blizzard where there's plowing to be done?
We are to notify the supervisor. At that point, he will make a phone call to the police, and depending on if they can have the resident move it, it gets moved. If not, it gets towed.
And with regard to that policy, did you comply with that policy in those early morning hours?
No, I did not,
Why?
because I was being courteous to the Albert family.
Now, once you saw the Ford Edge parked on the side of the road near that flagpole, what did you do?
I had to go around the vehicle and as to not hit the vehicle.
All right, and probably obvious, but as you're approaching the vehicle, was it faced in the same direction that you were traveling?
Yes,
And so you're going around to the left or the right of the vehicle?
left.
And once, as you were approaching that vehicle, were you able to see on the right side of that vehicle, the lawn side?
Yes,
Did you see anything on the front lawn at that time?
Objection.
I'll allow it. Did you see anything?
no,
Lights were still on.
correct.
All right, now, once you pass the vehicle, did anything attract your attention at all?
No,
All right, where do you go?
I go up to the end of Fairview and do the same process, take a left on Chapman and back down Chapman and take a left into Fairview again.
Once you come back down Fairview, do you pass the Albert residence again?
Correct.
Was there that car that you saw?
Correct.
It moved from when you passed it the first time.
No,
Were you able to see the front lawn of the Alberts in front of you as you were coming down Fairview towards Cedar Crest?
not as much as the first time because the car blocked the view.
All right. Now, after that, how long did it take you before you came back to that area to plow again?
About 3 hours.
Do you recall about what time it was that you wound up back on Fairview?
I don't honestly recall what specific time.
Sure.
Um,
Approximately, if it was 3:15 to 3:30, that second time, how, what would be your best estimate of the time when you came back?
I would say if I had to say, it would have been 5:30 up Fairview.
Okay.
And came back down, and then at that point I wasn't able to go further than Carriage Lane.
Okay, and when you say that you went up Fairview and came back down, you initially went from which side of Fairview?
Right side.
What would that be, the right side? I'm sorry. Would it be the Cedar Crest side or the,
It would have been Cedar Crest side.
coming from Cedar Crest and then you went up Fairview, came back down?
Came back down. As I'm going up, I am actually seeing first responders. And at that point, as I'm coming back down, the road's blocked at that point.
Okay. And when the road was blocked, what, if any, plowing were you able to do after that on Fairview?
I was able to go as far as Carriage Lane and then turn around.
Okay. And then I imagine it was several hours before you could plow again?
Before I could plow Fairview to the end of Cedar Crest, yes.
All right. Now, I'd like to direct your attention to February 15th of 2022. We were approached by an investigator who wanted to ask you questions about what you had seen and done on January 29th of 2022.
Yes.
Do you remember his name?
Yes.
What is it?
Paul?
And what was your understanding about whom Paul worked for?
Objection.
Ask it differently.
On February 15th of 2022, were you ever approached by anybody in law enforcement, sir?
No.
So what was your understanding of Paul's job?
Objection.
I'll see Councilor Tybar.
You are unmuted.
Just a couple questions, Mr. Loughlin.
Sure.
At any point in 2022, were you ever approached by any police investigators, sir?
No.
When was the first time that you were approached by the state police in this case? Do you recall?
I don't recall the actual date, but I do know.
Year?
Yes.
What year was that?
2023.
And do you recall the name of the investigator that approached you?
Mike Proctor and Sergeant, and I can't pronounce his name. I don't want to.
If I said Buchanan, would that ring a bell?
Yes, it is.
I have nothing further. Thank you, sir.
Okay, Mr. Lally?
Thank you, Your Honor.
Well, one second.
Good morning.
approach?
Yes.
Sir, I'm showing you a document that's already been marked with Exhibit 109. Just ask you to look at that, look up whenever you're finished, okay?
Yes.
You recognize that, sir?
Yes, I do.
And what do you recognize that, sir?
These are the plow routes for the town of Canton.
And there's different numbers that are associated with different routes and different drivers assigned to those routes, is that right?
Yes.
And if you look down at number 11, is that your route that you were talking about as far as the Fortunate Cedar Crest neighborhood that you plow?
Yes.
And that's the route that you were assigned to on January 28th and January 29th of 2022, correct?
Yes.
Now, if I could ask, just as far as there's a certain way that you plow a route.
Yeah.
Excuse me. There's a certain way that you plow a road, correct?
Correct.
And when you're first plowing the road, you're sort of plowing the middle of the road, correct?
Correct.
And you do it in sort of a fashion that's referred to as ring road right, is that correct?
Yes.
Can you explain to the jury what that is and sort of why you're plowing a road in that particular fashion when you're first starting to get out there with the plow?
So ring road to the right refers to the snow coming off the plow. It actually leaves a row of snow. We ring road to the right to prevent cars from having to go through the ring road to the left. If you go to the left, you've now put the ring road in the middle of the left-hand lane. So everything's to the right.
So everything's to the right because if there was a vehicle coming the other way, you'd be plowing into that vehicle, is that correct?
Correct.
And your goal sort of when you're first getting out there to plow the roads is to sort of clear the middle of the roadway first, correct?
Correct.
So that's where your truck is when you first go out and plow the road, is you're sort of in the middle of the road near the double yellow line if there is one on that road?
Correct.
Okay. Now, this truck that you were driving, on that day, how long have you been assigned to that truck for plowing purposes?
I was assigned to that truck for probably 2 years, maybe longer.
Maybe longer. Were you driving that same truck in 2015?
No.
No? Okay, so you're driving a different truck at that point?
Correct.
Do you remember what kind of truck that was?
It was an F-550 utility truck, pickup truck.
Similar in size or shape to the truck that you were driving that day?
No.
Now, you were asked some questions about February 15th, 2022, and you spoke to some investigator on that day, correct?
February 15th?
Yes, 2020. That Paul person you were talking about?
Yes.
Okay. And you met him at a skating rink, is that right?
Correct.
And you said in a statement to him at that time that you would have seen a body on the front lawn or the sidewalk, is that right?
Correct.
Now, are you aware that there is no sidewalk on the same side of the street as 34 Fairview Road?
Correct.
Now, you mentioned some familiarity with the Alberts and with the Albert resident. Are there other people on that route that you're familiar with as far as where they live and who they are and all that?
Yes.
And how are you equally familiar with them, more familiar with them, or less familiar with them?
Equally.
Equally? Now, familiarity with 34 Fairview Road, does that extend to sort of the lighting around that area?
No.
So do you know that there is actually no street lighting whatsoever in the area of the fire hydrant or the flagpole or anywhere there for several hundred feet?
Correct.
So you do know?
Yeah, I believe so, yes.
And so when you're driving by, you're looking for cars coming out of the driveway, cars coming in the opposite direction, people walking, is that correct?
Correct.
And you're trying to look for those objects so that you make sure that you don't strike them or hit them or anything like that, correct?
Correct.
And on February 15th, 2022, when you had this meeting with Paul, you told him about 3:30 or 4 a.m. Is when you saw this Ford Edge on Cedar Place, correct?
Correct.
Now, in fact, when you first spoke to this individual named Paul, you didn't tell him it was a Ford Edge, correct?
No, told him it was Ford Edge.
You didn't tell him first that it was a small SUV?
No, told him it was Ford Edge.
Do you remember at any time Paul taking you on the parking lot and showing you different vehicles and asking you if those vehicles matched what vehicle you saw?
No. He wanted to make sure that what I was telling him was accurate. So he showed me what was a Ford Edge, but I had already told him it was a Ford Edge.
So he brought you out to the parking lot at the skating rink that you were meeting at, specifically showed you a Ford Edge and asked you if that was the vehicle.
Correct.
Now, do you know sort of the difference between if you were to see a Ford Edge at nighttime in a snowstorm, the difference between a Ford Edge and a Jeep Cherokee?
Yes.
What's the difference?
The taillights in the back.
What about it?
Ford Edges are more round. The whole back facade is a little bit more round. The Jeep Cherokee are more square.
Now, what color was this SUV that you saw?
I can't tell you that. I am colorblind.
Can you tell, I'm just curious, sir, as far as your color blindness, can you tell whether or not an object is dark or light just by looking at it? Or you can't
I can see things that are light. I can see things that are dark. I can see true colors. I can't see shades of true colors.
And so from what you saw, was this light or dark?
Light.
Now, you told this Paul individual on February 15th that the SUV that you saw was exactly where Mr. O'Keefe's body was found, correct?
Correct.
How do you know where his body was found?
I told him specifically if he was looking at the door, the front door, it was about 3 feet to the left of the door. And with
To the left of the door?
looking at the front of the door to the left of the door, pushing it up Fairview.
So if he wrote in his report that you told him that the vehicle was exactly where the body was found, that would not be true?
Objection.
No, I'll allow that.
Could you repeat that question, please?
If he wrote in his report that you told him that the SUV was exactly where the body was found, that would not be true, would it not?
That would be true. The car was to the left of the door, putting it in front of the flagpole.
My question for you, sir, is how do you know where Mr. O'Keefe's body was found? At any point in time, did you see Mr. O'Keefe's body on the front lawn?
No.
So how do you know where Mr. O'Keefe's body was found?
Through police reports, police interviews, stuff that was posted on the media.
So you've seen police reports in the media?
Well, not the police reports, I'm sorry, but what was said during on the news.
So what you've heard on the news, not necessarily what you saw or what you know yourself, correct?
Could you repeat that question, please?
You're recounting sort of what you've heard or saw on the news, so this doesn't come from your personal knowledge or anything about where Mr. O'Keefe was, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now, you also spoke with some other individuals in May of 2023, correct?
Correct.
Now, did you tell those individuals that you actually came in, and when you say came in, you come into sort of the main sort of hub or the shed on Boulevard Street, correct?
Correct. We punch in.
That's where you punch in and you pick up your truck and you sort of do your checkpoint around the truck and then you go out and plow.
Correct.
Now, you were plowing on this street. Was there any other sort of subcontractor or anything else that was working, plowing the roads as well?
Yes.
And who was that?
It was by the yard landscaping.
And so they assist as far as the plow route is concerned, and they go around and they plow things on the same route that you were describing, correct?
Correct.
Now, these other people that you talked to in May of 2023, did you tell them at that time that you actually came in around 11:30 p.m. to 12 a.m.?
I don't remember that.
You don't remember that, or you didn't tell them?
I don't remember that.
So that would be a significant difference, 11:30 PM to 12 AM from 2:15 AM and 2:30 AM, correct?
Correct.
Now, you also indicated to them at that time that you went past Fairview at approximately 12 AM and 2 AM, correct?
I never did 12, but it was definitely 2:30,
So if they wrote
2:40,
that in a report, that
2:35.
would be inaccurate as well, correct?
Sustained, and only one person can talk at a time.
I apologize. I'm sorry, sir. Please continue and finish your answer.
I didn't hear the question.
Okay. Well, let me ask it again. So as far as if that was contained within a report regarding that conversation in May of 2023, that you went past Fairview Road or went down Fairview Road at 12 AM and 2 AM, that would not be accurate, correct?
Objection.
Sustained, ask it differently.
Did you go down Fairview Road at 12 AM and 2 AM?
No,
If that were contained in a report of your conversation you had in May of 2023, would that be accurate?
Objection.
Sustained, ask it differently, Mr. Allen.
Now, as far as that conversation that you had in May of 2023, did you tell those individuals that you saw the vehicle around 1:30 or 2 in the morning?
again, I don't remember ever saying that.
Is that accurate as far as whether or not you told them that?
Again, I don't remember saying that.
Did you see a vehicle around 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning?
I wasn't on the road at 1:30 or 2 o'clock in the morning.
Correct. Now, do you also recall telling those individuals that Fairview Road was blocked off by cruisers at about 3 or 3:30 in the morning?
Again, that would have been incorrect.
Do you recall saying that in May of 2023?
I do not.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes. Johnson.
Sir, I'm going to ask you to read, join to adopt. I'm going to ask you to read this paragraph, and this paragraph to yourself, okay? And then whenever you're done, just report them, right? Are you finished, sir?
Yes.
Okay. May I approach this retrieval?
Yes.
Thanks. Mr. Loughran, after having reviewed that, as your memory refreshed as to that conversation you had in May of 2023,
No, it does not.
so you still, after reading that, don't recall telling anybody in May of 2023 that you came in around 11:30 PM, 12 AM on the 28th, 29th?
I never came in at 11:30, 12:30 at night. It was 2:30 calling.
You don't recall indicating to anyone in May of 2023 that you went past Fairview at 12 AM and 2 AM?
Correct, never did.
And you don't recall telling anyone that you saw the car around 1:30 or 2 AM? Is that correct?
Correct,
And you don't recall telling anybody that the part of Fairview containing 34 Fairview was blocked off at 3 or 3:30 AM, correct?
correct.
Now, if the part of Fairview that you were talking about, you didn't say that in May of 2023, because at 3 or 3:30, the roadway wasn't blocked off, correct?
Correct,
It was blocked off sometime around 6 AM, correct?
correct.
And so if you had said that the roadway was blocked off at 3 or 3:30 in the morning, and it was actually 6, then when you saw the vehicle would have been off a little bit as well, correct?
Objection.
Sustained.
seeing the car at 1:32 in the morning, with the road being blocked off, at 3 or 3:30 in the morning, if the road's blocked off at 6 a.m., then that actually would have been, you saw a car sometime around 5 a.m., correct?
Objection.
Sustained.
Sure you didn't see a black Lexus SUV in front of the house at 34 Fairview Road around 5 a.m.?
No,
Now, you also were asked some questions and you spoke to some troopers in August of 2023, correct?
correct,
And County Canton, they have a parking ban in Canton, is that correct?
correct,
That goes from November until April?
correct.
Now, part of your plow route is a road called Tippy Cart, correct?
Correct.
Where is Tippy Cart in relation to Fairview?
It is on top of it's on the right side of Cedar Crest. It would put it 2 streets before Fairview.
And at some point, when you were plowing on Tippy Cart that night, you actually hit a basketball hoop, is that right?
Yes,
And did you call that in?
yes.
And as a result of that, what happened with the basketball hoop after that?
Nothing. The point was to make sure I was covered, basically. That's why I notified my supervisor that I hit the basketball hoop.
About what time was that you hit the basketball hoop?
I don't recall.
Is it closer to when you started, closer to when you ended?
I don't recall. I don't recall what time.
You don't recall anything specific about that time, correct?
No, just that I know I hit the basketball net.
And obviously, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth or anything, sir, but you didn't intentionally hit the basketball hoop, correct?
Correct.
So you hit it because you didn't see it, correct?
No, I was attempting to avoid the net by going around it. And the machine had a different size body than what it originally had. And I underestimated when I was going around that I need to be wider.
So you misjudged the distance, is that fair to say?
Yes.
May we approach, Your Honor?
Okay.
You are unmuted.
Now, sir, at some point prior to coming in here and testifying today, have you met with Mr. Yannetti?
Yes,
How many times?
twice.
And when were those times?
Tuesday, Saturday.
Tuesday and Saturday, when, sir?
Tuesday of last week, Saturday of last week.
Person that you swore was the person present there as well?
Yes,
And did you make note of Paul writing anything down or Mr. Yannetti writing anything down while you were talking to them?
no,
And as far as you're aware, there's no recording from any of those conversations or any of those meetings, is that correct?
correct.
So, sir, I'm correct if I say that you're sure about every time that you went down Fairview Road and everything that you saw going down Fairview Road, but you're completely unaware of the time that you ran into and struck a basketball hoop that night, is that correct?
Objection.
Sustained, you can ask it differently.
Sure about all the times that you went down Fairview Road?
Yes,
And you have no idea what time that you went on Tippy Cart and you struck the basketball hoop, is that right?
if you ask me to guess, I can guess for you.
I'm not asking you to guess, sir, I'm asking you to know.
I don't recall exactly what time I hit that net.
Nothing further.
All right, you think, Mr. Giannetti?
Briefly, there's just one question I wanted to make sure that we understand what's going on.
So no statements, right? Just ask a question.
I always do that. I apologize, Your
Okay.
Honor. You were asked the question by Mr. Lally, are you sure you didn't see a black Lexus at around 5 a.m. in front of Fairview? And your answer was no. And my question to you is, does that mean that you're not sure if you saw one or that you didn't see?
Objection.
I'll allow that.
I did not see a Lexus at 5 a.m.
At any point that night while you were plowing,
No,
you see a black Lexus in front of 34 Fairview?
no.
Thank you, sir.
Very briefly, based on your timeline, were you on Fairview Road at 5 a.m.?
Yes,
How so, sir?
it was about 3 hours after the last time I went on it. So it put me, I was last on it at about 3:45, about 5:30.
You were on the road about 2:45 and you said it took you about 45 minutes to sort of do the loop and come back, correct?
Correct.
And from the time that you were on there, including the time that it took you to plow and the time that it took you to do all of those things along the route, you're coming back to Fairview Road at 45 minutes later, or it took you 45 minutes to do the route?
It was about 45 minutes.
And so from there, 45 minutes, from what time are we talking that you were first there? Said about 2:45 or so?
About 3:30. With some,
3:30, okay.
Yeah.
So about 3 hours after that would then be about 6:30, correct?
it was about, I mean, I know I went up there and saw the first responders coming down. And when I,
What I'm asking is, you would testify that you may or you were on Fairview Road around 5 a.m. If you're not returning for 3 hours later, and that's about 6:30 from 3:30, correct?
correct,
So then you were not on Fairview Road at 5 a.m., correct?
I was. The time that it took me to do what I needed to do put me there about 5. So when I'm coming down Cedar Crest from doing my route, I am constantly looking at Fairview to make sure that it's considered a main road. So we need to take that as a priority. So if it's a lot of snow on that road, I am going to go turn around and do the road so that the road is available. So first responders have access to that road.
So, sir, what I'm saying is you testified, your timeline, that you
Yep.
came down there around 6:30 in the morning, correct?
My timeline was 5:30.
So 3 hours
5:30?
after 3:30.
It was 45 minutes.
No, 45 minutes was from 2:45 to get you to 3:30. Then 3 hours later, it's 6,
It was
correct?
It was about 45 minutes because I didn't get a lot of time. At that time, the snow was coming down at a significant rate, and I needed to make sure Fairview was kept clear. So I come down and I check. So I have the streets are all around Fairview. They're 5-10 minutes around Fairview. So the furthest street from Fairview is Kings Road.
So my question is, sir, are you talking about coming down Fairview, or are you talking about being on another road and looking at Fairview?
Coming down Cedar Crest, looking at Fairview.
Despite that timeline that you gave her?
I am always looking at that street.
Nothing.
All right, Mr. Lochran, you are all set, sir.
Thank you.
I'm going to move and ask Dr. Marie Russell to join us.
Okay.
Watch your step for me. You solemnly swear to the evidence you give the court and during the case now and here, and the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help me God.
I do.
Thank you. Take a seat.
All right, whenever you're ready, Mr. Jackson.
Thank you, Your Honor. Dr. Russell, could you please, in a loud, clear voice, state your name and spell your last name for us?
Hi, Dr. Marie Russell, Russell.
Doctor, what do you do for a living?
I'm an emergency room forensic pathologist, just recently retired.
And prior to your retirement, what was your position?
The immediate position before retirement was chief medical executive at for the state of California at the Corcoran State Prison.
And
So, Dr. Russell, I'm going to ask you to keep your voice up, okay?
Yes, I'll try.
Thank you.
Thank you.
there's a couple of air conditioners in here. Just keep your voice as loud as possible. What is, in fact, an emergency physician?
An emergency physician is a medical specialist who has completed a internship residency in the field of emergency medicine, which is a field which involves taking care of patients that are sick or injured and go to the emergency room.
Can you tell us what your education, starting with your education, training, and background is that qualifies you as an emergency physician, starting with your education all the way back to college?
Okay, Well, I have completed at least 16 years of formal education beyond high school, which includes college, and then 4 years of medical school, then 4 years of emergency medicine residency and internship, and then 4 years of pathology residency, which includes 2 years of anatomic and 2 years of forensic pathology. And then I treated, I've taken a bunch of other courses and attended seminars.
Let's start with your college. Where'd you go to college? Where'd you start?
Okay. MIT. I did my first year at MIT where I took my pre-med courses.
And then what happened after that? By the way, about what year was that?
Oh, that was in 1972 to 73.
Where did you go after MIT?
So what happened? I was interested in becoming a doctor, and so I took the pre-med courses, and then subsequent to that first year, I learned that my mother had metastatic breast cancer, and so I decided to go home to New York to be with her. After that, she subsequently passed away, and I returned to Massachusetts and decided to take advantage of the time off from school to investigate my interest in law enforcement. And I subsequently became a police officer here in Massachusetts.
So following MIT, did you go to a police academy?
I did.
Which police academy did you go to?
I went to the Boston Police Academy.
And did you end up becoming a sworn officer?
Yes.
For how long?
I did it for 7 years full time.
And what department did you work for?
I worked for the City of Malden Police Department.
What years was that, if you could give me a range?
From 1977 to 1984.
During the time that you were a Malden police officer, did you also go to school and continue your formal education?
I did.
Describe that for us, please.
Well, I took special through the Massachusetts Criminal Justice Training Council.
Objection, move to strike.
All right, so I'm going to strike that. Jurors, disregard that.
Let me ask you this way. I don't want to get into the specifics.
Okay.
While you were a police officer, did you also take formal education to further your medical training or your college?
Yes, I did.
That's what I'm interested in.
Okay.
Tell us about that.
Oh, yeah. So I attended Northeastern University part-time and received a Bachelor of Science degree in psychology.
After you got your degree in psychology from Northeastern, did you go on to continue your education in medicine?
I did. I attended medical school at the University of Massachusetts Medical School from 1983 to 1987.
Also known as UMass?
Yes.
Did you ultimately end up with a medical degree?
Did. Doctor.
After you became a doctor, did you engage in a residency?
Yes.
What years were the residency, that first residency?
So the first residency was from 1987 to 1991, and that was in Los Angeles at the Los Angeles County University of Southern California Medical Center.
Is that also known as LAUSC?
It was at the time, yes.
And that's associated with the University of Southern California Medical Center, is that right?
Yes.
After your first residency, by the way, what was your first residency in? What was the subspecialty?
So it was in emergency medicine, and USC is a very large trauma center.
How would you describe the size and volume of the USC Trauma Center?
Well, it's one of the busiest in the United States.
After your first residency in emergency medicine, did you do a second residency?
Yes.
What was the subspecialty in that second residency?
So I did a 2 years in anatomic pathology and 2 years as a fellow in forensic pathology at the Los Angeles County Coroner's Office.
So you did 2 full residencies after you became a doctor, is that right?
That is correct.
What's the difference? I don't want to go into great detail, but what's the difference between an emergency physician and, for instance, the residency that you did in pathology, both anatomic pathology and forensic pathology? What are the differences?
Well, generally, the emergency physician treats live patients, and the spectrum of injuries can be wide, or illnesses can be wide, and the forensic pathologist treats or deals with deceased patients generally.
Did you become a fellow at the LA Coroner's Office following your second residency?
No, that was part of the second residency.
Understood. Describe that fellowship.
So that was 2 years of full-time work at the LA Coroner's Office under the supervision of very experienced medical examiners. And what I did was I did autopsies, every day, 1 or 2 autopsies every day, attended conferences, and read journal articles, etc. It was a very formalized education.
Did you also become at some point a professor or an assistant professor at LAUSC, the medical center side, the university side?
Yes. So while I was doing the forensic pathology and anatomic pathology residencies during the daytime, I worked as a full-time ER doc supervisor in the capacity of an assistant professor in the evenings.
Did you also become an adjunct professor at Cal State Los Angeles, California State Los Angeles?
Yes.
At a separate university?
Yes.
And you had separate responsibilities as a professor in that role?
Yes.
Were you also teaching legal medicine and forensic medicine in that capacity?
That is correct. It was a master's level program.
How long were you an ER physician in total and an attending physician for Los Angeles County USC Medical Center?
29 years in total. 4 of those were in training and the rest were as a supervisor. And
of your 29 years, 25 of your 29 years, you were supervising others?
Correct.
Meaning other doctors?
Other doctors, yes.
Teaching other doctors?
Yes.
And teaching medical students?
Yes, and seeing their cases. Once they examined the patient, they would present their case or tell me about the case, and then I would go in and see those patients in addition to my patients.
That was my next question, doctor. In addition to teaching, were you also specifically assessing, diagnosing, and treating patients of your own?
Yes, not all the time. Some shifts I didn't have to do that, but much of the time, yes.
For the bulk of the 29 years that you were an ER doc, an emergency physician, in other words, were you also attending to patients as well?
Yes.
Once you left that fellowship with the LA Coroner's Office, did you remain active in any way or connected to the Los Angeles Coroner's Office?
Yes, so I would attend their weekly conferences when I could, when I was available and to do so. And I also consulted on some cases with them. So if they had something that was interesting and beyond their clinical expertise, they would sometimes consult me.
During your tenure at LAUSC, did you become the director of any of their sub-programs?
Yes.
Can you describe that for the jurors, please?
Yes, I was a director of the USC Center for Life Support Training. So, that involved teaching other doctors life support courses such as advanced cardiac life support, or we teach the surgeons advanced trauma life support.
I'm sorry?
Oh, go ahead.
Were you also a director for their quality improvement in the early 2000s?
Yes, for the emergency medicine department.
What was the reason for the quality improvement program, if you will, for LAUSC?
Well, for any program, it's ideal to have a quality improvement component, because what you want to do is look at cases that were treated and see if there were any errors, and if so, correct the errors, teach the doctors that involved, what went wrong, and try to make systemic improvements or teaching improvements to prevent those errors from occurring in the future.
Were you teaching basically best practices for emergency room physicians as well as trauma physicians and surgeons?
Yes, we tried.
And you were the director of that program, correct?
Yes.
Did you also become the director of LAUSC Jail Medical Services?
Yes.
What is the connection or the tether between the jail system in Los Angeles and LAUSC Medical Center?
Well, LAC Jail Ward was established about 70 years ago, and it was a place that the officers from various agencies, such as LA Sheriff's, LAPD, California Highway Patrol, or any of the municipalities around, could bring people that they arrested who were in need of medical care.
So the jail system, very large jail system, I'm guessing, in Los Angeles, correct?
Correct, yes.
There have to be medical attendants to that jail system, correct? Yes. And you became the director of the jail medical services for the entirety of that system?
For the hospital component of it.
Understood. In California, you're obviously licensed in California.
Yes.
There is a state medical board in California, correct?
Yes.
And did you ever do any work with that state medical board?
Yes, I worked with them for about 7 years part-time as a regular employee embedded in their enforcement unit. And what that involved was examining cases that were referred to the medical board because of substandard care or illegal activities of the providers. It was for physicians and physician assistants that we regulated.
What was your title with the state medical board for those purposes?
The title was medical consultant. That was the official title.
Okay. And then before your retirement, by the way, what years were you the medical consultant for, or a medical consultant for the state board in California?
Gee, I think from 2009 to 2016. I think those were the years. I'm not positive.
All right.
I did that. That was a job I was doing. One, I was doing the LA County USC Medical Center job too. It was an extra job.
So you didn't stop working as a physician, an emergency physician at LAUSC to take that position?
No.
You just consulted with them?
I did it once a week, 1 day a week.
Got it. And then with regard to one of your last positions that you held, did you become the chief medical executive for the California State Prison Corporate?
Yes.
Tell me about that position and the years that you held that position.
So that was from 2018 to 2023. And as the chief medical executive, I was the supervisor of all the doctors and nurse practitioners that provided care to the inmates.
And obviously the California prison system is a very large prison system.
Very.
Doctor, are you board certified in emergency medicine?
Yes.
Are you a member of the National Association of Medical Examiners?
Yes, I'm actually fellow status, which is higher than member.
Are you a member of the American Academy of Forensic Science?
Yes, again, I'm a fellow there.
Which also is an advancement above just being a member?
Correct.
Have you ever published in the area, and now I'm going to get very specific, have you ever published peer-reviewed articles and done research in the area of animal bites and scratches?
Yes.
Did you author or co-author a peer-reviewed article named Managing Law Enforcement Dog Bites in the ER?
Yes.
About what year was that?
It was in the 1990s.
Late 1990s, 1996, does that
Yes.
sound right? Did you also author or co-author an article called Law Enforcement Canine Dog Bites, Injuries, Complications, and Trends?
Yes.
So given those articles, did you study specifically dog bites, dog wounds on the human body?
Yes, I have a very strong interest in wounds in general, and I have a strong interest in dog bites in particular.
During the course of your career, your professional experience, how many patients would you say you've seen or treated with animal injuries, including bites and scratches?
It's very hard to estimate, but between my own practice and the residents that I supervised, it was, I'm sure, well over 500, and could possibly be double that.
Could be up as many as 1,000.
It could be, yes.
Have you qualified as an expert in emergency medicine in the past?
Yes.
You qualified as an expert in the area of forensic pathology and wounds in the past?
Yes.
Is that both in federal and state courts?
Yes.
Doctor, were you asked to review certain materials related to this case in furtherance of coming to some opinions and conclusions about injuries suffered by John O'Keefe specific to his right arm?
Yes.
What did you review in coming to your opinions and conclusions?
Well, I reviewed hospital records and pictures taken of him in the hospital, when he was in the hospital. I reviewed autopsy records, the autopsy report, and photographs taken during and before the autopsy. I reviewed, let's see, I reviewed reviewed the grand jury testimony of the autopsy pathologist. I reviewed affidavit of Dr. Sheridan. I reviewed the town of Canton dog bite reports about regarding incidents.
Action, may we approach?
Yes.
Hey there, Karen Reed, trial watchers. This is another law and crime legal alert. Have you experienced severe gastroparesis?
Lally was Lally just did not put on a very good case at all. The medical examiner testified under direct examination that the injuries John O'Keefe sustained are not consistent with the typical injuries you would see on someone who was hit by a vehicle. And something else that stuck out to me, and I heard a blogger say um that David Yannetti had a Perry Mason moment, and what they meant by the Perry Mason moment was that he pretty much got the guy to say that could not have been Karen outside the Albert's home at 12:30 something, because she had just attached on to John O'Keefe's Wi-Fi, who was at a completely different address. And then when Yannetti got this guy nailed down about the time, and then he goes back to the clocks and he said, with the Apple Health program and the Apple program itself, there's like 3 different clocks, and the clocks are off by about 3 minutes. So that could be really putting a wrench in it. And something else that I noticed was they said the up and down the stairs, John's phone going up and down the stairs, is because Karen and John were driving up and down hills. So the computer mistaken the hills for they were going up and down stairs inside the Albert's home. So see if that makes any sense at all. Let's see what else we got going on here. Yeah, we waiting for to see what's gonna happen and what's gonna happen next. Yeah, this trial has been it's definitely been very, very interesting. So many things to take from this, to learn from this, to see that this has been going on for a long time, especially in lower income areas, people that don't have money for Alan Jacksons and David Yannetti's. I see policemen, or not really policemen, but people from across the United States, and they say, "What is it up there in Boston and New England with police shaving their head bald?" So if anyone has the answer to that, but there are some great Karen Reed content creators. Um, I say Karen Reed content creators because they got involved with this creating content because of the Karen Reed story. One of them, he's a former ATF guy, former local mass cop, done all types of things. He has a great channel. I think it's like In the Motion. Sean McDonough, I believe his name is. Let's see if I could find him. And then another one is the young jerk, Mike Crawford. He has Mike Crawford has another great channel, the young jerk, where you can get some information from. Turtle Boy, who broke all this open. On Just Law, I think, is another one. Baker, that's another one. But there's so many, and I won't call them low level. They're not mainstream. They're not mainstream like Vinny over there at Court TV. Another one, lawyers, he talks about the angry voicemails recently. I'm trying to find some good one. Let me see. Young Jerk. Nope, nope, not Young Thug. Young Jerk. Yep, Young Jerk Karen Reed trial. He has a great one. Let's see, he's actually live right now. We'll go see what he is actually talking about. Let's see. Yes, you can check him out, the Young Jerks, JURKS, over on YouTube. There's also the Glare, GLAER. The Glare is another one. Legal Bites. That's another one. Vinnie Pollington has a page. I'm still waiting to see what the Young Jerks are doing. I can't get onto that one. Everyone's live. Let's see what the Glare. Here we go. If I can hear you. I'm not getting no sound over here. Let's see. There we go. So we'll see what he's saying.
Oh, okay. I mean, I'm not talking about whether it's a bought juror or not, but I mean, it would be pointless to buy. You would have to be in on it. That's not even the it's the possibility of that is like one millionth of a chance. The possibility of that, I mean, I don't think that the Alberts and the McCabe's have the kind of money that it would take to satisfy every one of those jurors.
Oh, absolutely not. For their integrity, no, you might get one or
I don't
two.
think they have it. All it takes is one jury to be like, no way, no way can I. Are you going to convince me that this woman is guilty? Like, I have doubts. I suspect every single juror is feeling that way right now. I don't think that there's one juror in that whole jury pool that believes beyond a reasonable doubt doesn't work the other way. The jurors do not have to be unanimous to reach a not guilty verdict. They have to be unanimous, however, to reach a guilty verdict. Period. That's it. That's
This guy is definitely pretty well.
Right. Match that cup.
Are we talking which cup we never established which cup we're talking about.
How many cups have we been talking about?
You said that from the seat.
That cup. I'm talking.
I just want to make sure that we're on the there.
Yeah.
I'm clear what we're talking about.
John O'Keefe's body in the snow at 34 Fairview on January. That's the cup. When I say cup, that's the cup.
Okay.
Yep.
Would it change your?
There's only one cup in this frame of reference. There's been no ambiguity about the cup. When he says that cup, it can only be referring to one thing. There's only one antecedent. There's only one antecedent, right? The word that is a definite article. It refers to a specific thing. That cup, not a cup, that cup. It's a specific antecedent. And we all know what cup, because there's only been one cup in discussion. But somebody's like, I'm not sure which cup you mean. Literally the only cup we've been talking about. There's only one possible antecedent. That's how English works. There's only one possible cup we could be talking about. The cup that was found with John O'Keefe's body. That cup, you idiots. Can you follow along? Can you follow the bouncy ball? Can you follow the bouncy ball as it moves? Please follow the bouncy ball. Damn.
Opinion. If I told you if the glass pieces on the bumper don't match that cup.
What's my opinion on it? All I said was glass from a cup. That's the only opinion I have. It's glass from a cup that was on a bumper.
Are you saying a cup?
A cup. A cup. It's not glass from the car. That was my opinion on it.
What cup? What cup? If not that cup, what cup? Where is this other mysterious cup coming from? That the glass is from. Where is it coming from? Where is this other glass coming from? What other cup could it be?
I never said it matched to the scene.
You didn't.
I never said that in my thing. I said it's glass from a cup.
How did you make that determination, incidentally? How did you make the determination it's glass from a cup in particular? I mean, there might be an answer to this question. I'm genuinely asking. But how did you make that determination? Is glass from a cup different from glass from other purposes? Maybe the answer is yes. Maybe there's certain kinds of glass that are only used for cups and not used for anything else. I don't know. I'm not an expert. But how did you determine it was glass from a cup? Did you determine it because it's a type of glass that only is used for cups and no other purpose, so it must be from a cup? Did you make it that way? Or how are you drawing these conclusions? On what basis did you make the conclusion? Can you help me out on that one, please? Please help me out.
It's safe to say you didn't do any testing to determine the forces necessary to shatter a taillight on a 2021 Lexus 570, right?
I did not do testing.
Of course not. Why did you do testing, expert?
Well, wait, I was told by Lieutenant, was it Gallagher, Paul Gallagher, Cat PT. He told me this is where the body was found. So I used my devices to mark that location.
Okay, but before you used your devices, he just pointed someplace on the ground and said he was about here.
Yeah,
correct?
That's correct.
Did Lieutenant Gallagher tell you that Lieutenant Gallagher never saw John O'Keefe in place at the scene? Did you say that?
No.
Wow. Okay. So the person who told you where the body was found did not personally observe the body at the scene. So your marking of where the body was found was based on a guy telling you where the body was found who did not observe the body. Yeah, that seems a bit problematic to me. And you based your entire reconstruction.
This is too
You based your
much.
entire reconstruction on where the pieces of glasses were found. The pieces of glass were found, which themselves were not marked. So those are not marked where the pieces of glass were found, other than the one by the fire hydrant, because, well, we have it in a shot, but none of the other pieces of glass were marked. So you don't know where the pieces of glass were found. And you're also, it's based on where the body was found, and that mark was based on someone telling you who himself did not observe it. And your entire reconstruction was based on the, well, I guess what evidence, and that's what your report was based on. Do I really have to sit here and point out the problems? Do I really have to sit here and explain why this poses a problem? Do I really have to explain it? Because if I have to explain it, God help us all.
Yeah, whoever was there, who was there with you when you started doing your measurements, et cetera? For Fairview?
To Lieutenant Gallagher. That too.
Just you and him?
And myself, and I was training a trooper at the time. She was there.
You were training a trooper at the time?
Yes.
Okay, so
this guy's in charge of training troopers. This guy's in charge of training. Holy shit!
You had no photographs of John O'Keefe in place, correct?
Correct.
There were no establishing shots.
How do you not have a photograph of where the body was found? How do you not have 300 photographs of where the body was found? So you can determine frames of reference. Isn't photographing the body kind of, sort of basic crime scene procedure, I think? Photographing it from many angles. And so you can see like what's around in the scene and all that kind of stuff. How do you not have photographs? And you're the reconstruction expert. How's that work?
Do you have any scientific evidence to establish what her actual path of travel is, or did you just guess at the path of travel?
I got the addresses from Trooper Proctor. I put them into the thing, and one of the possibilities of 36 miles, and that was after looking at all of them, at 36 miles is a possibility.
Right, understood. So that's what I'm trying to get to, Trooper Paul.
Okay.
That's one possibility. There's 36 miles, one route of travel, right?
Correct.
There are other possibilities, right?
Yes.
So between the possibility that you picked and the other possibilities, you just sort of have to guess. And there's no science to it. You said, I'm going to pick that. You put it in my report, right? And you knew that there was another route of travel to the same location, correct?
What do you mean?
There were alternative routes of travel to the same 2 points, from and to the same points, correct?
Yes. Yes.
You could have tried to extract the location data from the street's cell phone to determine the exact route of travel, correct?
I don't know. I don't have access to do cell phone extractions.
So that answers my next question. You did not even attempt to do that, did you?
No.
If your testing occurred at key cycle 1164, that means you turn the engine on, the ignition on to start your testing, correct?
Correct.
And that triggering event that we see up there at 1164 initiated your testing, is that right?
Yes.
All right. So that 1164 is where that's where there's no more unknowns, in other words, right? You know exactly where the car is, who's in the car, who turned the car on, and what the triggering events were and what they reflected, because you did it, correct?
Correct.
It's you.
Yes.
So starting at 1164 and counting backward, before you started your testing, you know that the SUV had to be started, the ignition had to be turned over, and it was driven to the Sally Port in Canton at 5:31 p.m. from a tow truck on January 29th, correct?
I didn't know that.
You did?
You did or did not?
Did not know that.
Okay.
I mean, is that just
Assuming
logical?
The car had to be started and put on a tow truck. That would be key cycle what?
I don't know how. I can't speak to the fact that recorded a key cycle at that time.
I can't hear you.
I can't speak to the fact that would record a key cycle at that time.
Okay. If the car was turned on and driven onto a tow truck, would that be a key cycle?
I don't know because these keys record different ways, so I can't speak to how or why it did not record on there. All I can speak to is that those are the key cycles. The odometer mileage is more what I was going after on this whole thing.
Trooper Paul, you just said unequivocally, when a car is turned on and then turned off, there's a key cycle.
I said when the car without the ignition on, that's a key cycle.
Right.
That's correct.
That's what I mean, when it's turned on, when the engine turns on.
That's the definition of what it is. I can't speak to why it didn't go on, why it did not record.
So we're going with, once again, the log is wrong. That's what we're going with once again. So the Celebrite data is wrong. The evidence data is wrong. The cops reports are wrong. So all these databases are wrong. That is a lot of independent databases that are all wrong at the same time. You just have to say that is a lot of independent databases that all have errors all at the same time. And okay, so the Lexus, every time there's a key cycle, would record it, but for some reason it didn't record those key cycles. Somehow, some way, the Lexus just did not record those particular key cycles. Yeah, and we're supposed to believe this. We're supposed to believe that once again that the data is just fundamentally wrong. Okay. I mean, sure. Why not? All right.
Let's talk about the ignition cycles.
Okay.
Before 1164. Okay.
Okay.
Obviously, the car had to get to Canton PD because you saw it there, correct?
Correct.
Assume for purposes of my question, the car was turned on, and there's a video of it turning on, driving up onto a flatbed tow truck.
Yes.
That would be ignition cycle. I'm going to use your word, key cycle, ignition cycle, 1163, correct?
Again, ignition cycle, key cycles are two different things.
Which word do you want me to use?
If you want to talk about key cycles, key cycles. You want to talk about ignition cycles, it's ignition cycles when its vehicle gets turned on. A key cycle does not mean to be turned on.
But every single ignition cycle includes a key cycle. You can't have an ignition cycle without a key cycle, right?
Well, if you want to talk about it, just use the key cycles or ignition cycles. I'm trying to make sure this gets out. I'm trying to make sure that this gets put out the correct way.
Every ignition cycle includes.
You will be ahead. You have no idea what you're doing.
In a sense.
By definition, it has to, right?
It doesn't have to. They record multiple different ways.
You can have an ignition cycle without a key cycle.
It hurts me.
I don't know how it recorded, but it could happen.
Sure, why not?
Explain that. How could that possibly happen?
Because a key cycle is when it turns on, not engine running, and then turns off.
Okay, so work with me here.
Ignition cycle is when it turns on, engine running for 2 seconds, and then comes off.
Okay.
Oh, God.
So,
or the 2 seconds, if it's not on long enough, it might not record one.
okay, let's ignore the 2 seconds.
Okay.
That's not what we're doing.
Let's ignore that.
All right. Let's assume that it's an old-fashioned type of key.
Okay.
Halfway on, the electricity is on. It's like it used to be called ACC.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
That's a key cycle, correct?
For that intensive purpose, yes. This vehicle's not a key cycle. It's not a thing.
Keep turning,
Okay.
and that turns the engine on, right?
It turns the engine on, correct.
An ignition cycle, right?
Yes. Well, then turns off.
So ignition cycle necessarily includes the precursor key cycle, correct? Even though every key cycle might not include an ignition cycle. Would you agree with that?
In that scenario, yes.
Thank you. Thank you for the basic logic.
Definition. I'm going to talk about
I'm so mad that
That's correct, because I hadn't reviewed them. then.
And so since then, 2 days ago, now you've reviewed them, correct?
Yes, I became aware that those files existed. Yes.
Became aware of those files? Were they not sent to you previously?
No, I think there were technical difficulties regarding me and the computer, and so yeah. So they were. I think they were sent to me, but I think I didn't open them.
Now, with reference to these technical difficulties, did you ever express any of those technical difficulties, or hey, I can't see the whole file, or there's other things in here that are listed that I can't look at?
No, I wasn't aware.
And so, with regard to as far as your reaching out or contact in regard to this case, how did that come about?
Okay. I saw an article, I believe it was in the Boston Globe, regarding this case, and I didn't.
I tell you,
initially I didn't think anything of it. Then I saw an article
Bev
that
handed him
indicated that
that.
there was some.
I'm not asking you anything about anything, any article.
Bev handed him
Saw an
that in
article
the
in
void
Boston
year.
Globe about
Yes.
This case, is that right?
Yes.
And how did you come?
If these premises are true, what must necessarily be true? In math, what must necessarily be true?
Had seen anything about that?
First time I paid attention to anything like that. Yes.
Now, again, you had testified here just a couple of days ago, and I
See, this is bad because the jury loves her.
It wasn't in your
He's
testimony
picking
a
on her.
couple of days ago that the subscription was actually for a year or 18 months.
No.
Remember, not 6 months a year.
So only one person can talk at a time. So was that your testimony, doctor?
No, I don't believe so. I believe that I said it was a 6 months subscription or a 12 month subscription.
What difference does it make?
In any event, you saw something. That's the first time that you recall seeing anything in the media about this case was in May of 2024?
It was the first time that I recall reading anything about it. Correct.
Now, did you write a report in regard to your opinions that you've testified here today?
No.
And I asked you that a couple days ago as well.
Yes.
Okay, so in the last couple of days, you've had time to review a UC Davis report, Dr. Sheridan's affidavit, and any sort of dog bite history. But
She's
you
going to
haven't
be
had a
like,
chance to write a
yes.
report.
Sustained to that form.
You haven't written a report, correct?
That's correct.
Why not?
I haven't been asked to write a report, sir.
Yeah. And
Did you ever look at anything related to Mr. O'Keefe's head injury?
I looked at.
Sustained.
see, the jury likes this lady. They love this lady.
Yes.
And so Lally is coming off like a bully because he's not getting anywhere with his questioning, and she's coming off as very forthcoming, and so right now the jury has they respect the hell out of this woman. She's an elder, she's educated, she's sweet. She's soft spoken. There's not a nefarious hair on her head. The jury sees this, and for Lally to try to make her out to be in some way, shape, or form nefarious in any way, shape, or form without being able to prove it, without being able to trip her up, this is just going to look bad on him, and it's looking bad on him right now. That I could promise you. And Turtle Boy tweeted, that notice how the defense gets right to the point with their witnesses. They are done in 30 minutes or less with critical witnesses who deliver devastating testimony. The jury is alert, engaged, and listening. Lally put these same people to sleep. I mean, this is massive, people. This woman just spent the majority of her time up there listing her qualifications, establishing credibility, and the remainder of the time, and I do mean remainder because it was the minority of the time up there, stating that she believes and has no doubt that those are attacks from an animal, that those are dog bites, dog scratches. She believes this 100%. That right there is more than enough to create doubt in that jury that Trooper Paul's testimony that his Karen Reed's tail light broke
You are unmuted.
and caused those injuries on John O'Keefe's arm. Officer John O'Keefe's arm.
May I have a moment, John?
Yes.
I'd say that there was a decent mix of age, but not very many elderly at all. Nobody even remotely elderly. The majority of the jury is young enough to look up to this lady here and respect her. Amy Boston, thank you so
Doctor,
much.
you
Wait for Wolf Daddy to get up there in the
testified that you had
stand.
some
No,
familiarity with,
zero chance.
areas
Thank
of
you.
Forensic science, you're on some boards, things of that nature. Is that correct?
Yes.
And as a result of that, or any other work experience, are you familiar with a NAS report from 2008?
Not with that limited information, no.
You're not aware of a report issued by the National Association of Forensic Science in 2008, which specifically has a section dealing with.
So I'm going to see you both at sidebar again.
Yeah, when these ARCA guys get up there, holy shit. Like, I can't wait for cross-examination of the ARCA guys. Like, I can't wait for that. And the reason for that is because those guys are infinitely, each one is infinitely more educated and smarter than Adam Lally. He will not outsmart them. He will attempt to. I'm looking forward to watching that cross-examination for the exact opposite of the reasons why I was looking forward to the defense cross-examining Lally's witnesses. For the exact opposite reason.
You are unmuted.
So, ma'am, you're not familiar with that report specifically as it applies to forensic odontology?
So could you say that again, Mr. Lally? What's the report?
The National Academy of Sciences 2008 report in relation to the section referring to forensic odontology.
I'm not familiar with that specific report, no.
So then you equally unfamiliar with the representation that that is not from the NAS report, that is not a reliable science as far as bite marks.
What?
There are certain aspects of bite marks that have been deemed not reliable. And that I believe has to do with saying that this particular person or animal inflicted this particular bite. But that's very specific, and that's what I'm aware of, that recommendation.
You're not aware of any findings in the NAS report that has led to questioning of the value and scientific objectivity of such evidence?
For specifically identifying a bite mark to an individual that might have inflicted the bite mark, I think that's what that applies to.
Okay, I'm not asking, again, this is a report. Are you familiar with it or are you not familiar?
I'm familiar with a summary or a abstract of a report that indicates that forensic odontology is not is deemed not reliable when it comes to that particular narrow aspect of forensic odontology.
And so you're not familiar with it. Also talking about sample data and collection, analyses of these, interpretation and reporting of results. You're not familiar with those areas of the NS report as well?
What specifically, do you have a specific question about that, or?
My first question was whether or not you're familiar with the report. You indicated that you weren't.
I did not read the report.
From the report.
Mr. Lally,
Sorry.
let the witness answer.
Today,
One question at a
dickhead.
time, one speaker at a time. Doctor, can you answer that question?
Sure. I did not read that report.
Now, you had written some articles that you were asked about in reference to dog bites or canine dog bites in the emergency department. Is that correct?
Yes, co-authored.
Something that you published or authored or co-authored sometime in the late 1990s. Is that right?
Correct.
And in that instance, you talk about law enforcement dogs and a bite and a hold technique, correct?
Yes.
Now, part of the reason in writing that article had to do with sort of the applied forces and the unique spectrum of injuries from those kind of dog bites. Is that correct?
Yes,
And that spectrum of injuries would include deep puncture wounds. Is that right?
they can, yes.
Severe crush injuries. Is that right?
Correct.
Large tissue avulsions and lacerations. Is that right?
Yes,
Wounds necessitating surgical debridement. Is that right?
yes,
Bony injuries ranging from cortical violations to displaced fractures. Is that right?
yes,
Neurovascular damage. Is that right?
yes,
And other wounds at high risk for infection, correct?
correct. But we also put a disclaimer in that article.
I'm not asking you about any disclaimer.
Okay.
I'm asking you about that's what type of injuries that you were looking at. Is that correct?
Yes, but we saw a skewed population.
You skewed population in a study. Is that correct?
What we saw the worst of the worst.
Or no? Did you
Yes.
skew the population in the study.
I'm sorry, I don't
Did
understand the
you
question.
skew the population.
Did we
in the
skew
study?
did we skew? No, we reported on all the ones that presented to the emergency room for care. However, a lot of dog bites don't present to the emergency room.
And so from the different cases that you report on within that article, are there any of those cases in which there is injuries to just one aspect of one part of the human body for the victims of dog attacks or dog bites in those cases?
There may have been. That's a summary of the 700 cases.
700 cases, you dickhead.
Is it normal in any kind of animal attack for injuries to occur on just one side of one arm of the person that's being attacked, clawed, or bitten?
There are many people who are bitten or scratched.
Right.
Only-
If it's normal, man. That's all I'm
Okay,
asking.
so Mr. Hold on, Mr. Jackson. Mr. Lally, ask a question, wait for the answer, and then start a next question. Do
Fucking
not
idiot.
interrupt the witness.
I apologize. I don't-
You big dummy.
That was awesome.
So ask a question and ask it in a manner that you get a responsive answer.
Dr. Russell, is it your
Jesus.
testimony that it's normal in
Suck
an
at
animal
this.
attack for injuries to occur on just one side of one arm and nothing else, anywhere else on that person's body?
It can be, yes.
I'm not asking if it can be. I'm asking, is that normal?
I can't
How-
say.
Yeah, who can?
Sustained, you have to ask the question differently.
Yeah, dude. The
So
fuck do you
from
mean?
your
You get the answer,
observations,
Mr.
you looked
Lally.
at various photographs of Mr. O'Keefe, is that right?
I did.
Did you observe any injuries on any other part of his body
All right,
that you would attribute
peeps,
to an
man.
animal attack, whether
Appreciate
it's claw marks,
everything,
bite
man.
marks,
We'll
or
be
anything
back
else?
with more. Check
No.
out our
So nothing on his left
Facebook
arm,
channel,
correct?
Don't Keep It Real podcast.
Nothing that identified as a dog bite or
Nothing on
scratch.
legs, is that correct?
We'll be back
That's
with
correct.
more, man. I
Torso,
believe
is that
on
correct?
trade
That's
now.
correct.
Really, by all accounts, man.
You say
you
an
really
animal
can't
attack,
give this woman
possibly
away
a
for
large
earth
dog,
on what
correct?
they had shown.
Yes.
Can you say what
But
type of
we all
animal
know
left these
basic-
marks that you attribute to an animal
basic
attack?
Is basically
Time I pull the plug, the game is over. The game is over. It's time I pull the plug. The game is over. The game is over. It's time I pull the plug. The game is over. That's
What?
bad guy. Bad guy. That's the bad guy. The bad guy.
Of course not.
The bad guy. The bad guy. The bad guy.
Load up that queen.
Now deal
ill with it. We see what happened when the last dude tried to. Yeah, I bet he probably went home and cried too. I chucked the line in the cafeteria. Lunch lady gave me a bowl of gravy, some mashed potatoes, and filled with it. So ill with it, I think I need a medal.
Not promote or promotion any illegal activities. All content provided by this channel is meant only for educational purpose only.
I mean, that's pretty good.
No.
Say anything?
No.
What?
As far as mentioned some of the different things that you reviewed over the course of your testimony, or the preparation of your testimony, both prior to Tuesday and between Tuesday and today. Any of those things contain any forensic reports or phone examinations or anything else related to this case?
Could you repeat that? I didn't. What kind of examination? Phone?